Welcome to the Motoring Podcast, a Genesis GV70 Special Edition. Hello, I'm Alan.
Hello, I'm Andrew. GV70, what's one of these then, Alan? We've heard of Genesis because we've had one before, but what is the GV70?
You previously on the Motoring Podcast, you had a Genesis G70 shooting brake, which was an estate car. This is a related model. It is the GV70, and so it is a sub. It is an SUV of sorts. So it is a jacked up, I'm not going to say off-roader, but it is a jacked up vehicle, which has all-wheel drive and many other fun things. But it is very much more an SUV. And it's what's generally termed a mid-size SUV.
Okay.
It's like the size of the original BMW X5. It's that sort of competition.
Okay.
So it's probably X3 size nowadays.
Yeah.
And it's very much more sort of halfway in the mold between, I say halfway, I don't mean halfway at all. It's very much in the mold of the Alfa Stelvio. It's the closest competition I can think of, in that it is a sort of, it has a certain sport feel to it, especially in the sport trim that I had. And it's not a full-on square-backed SUV. It's not a coupe SUV, like one of these awful German things.
Mm-hmm. More fastbacky thing.
Yeah, it's not fastbacky. It's styled to look a bit like that, but it's kind of halfway in between the two. Okay. As I say, a bit like the Alfa Stelvio.
Yeah. Okay.
If that gives you an idea of size and scale and sort of where it sits in the market, then hopefully that's the plan. It is Genesis's most popular model in the UK. I know that that's all relative because some of you will be making that joke to yourselves right at the minute, because it's a market where sort of this higher spec vehicle really does sell very well in the UK. Speaking of specs, there are 3 trim levels. There's premium, luxury, and sport. And in the UK, there are 2 engines available. There is a 2.5 turbo petrol, which is the same engine as is found in the G70 shooting brake. And there is also a 2.2-litre turbo diesel.
Okay.
I noticed from the one in the garage downstairs here that in the US, it's available with a 3.5-litre turbo petrol engine.
Oh, can't think why that didn't come to the UK.
Feel we're missing out a little bit on that one, to be honest. However, the diesel engine, which is actually the model that I drove, puts out 210 metric horsepowers with 440 newton meters of the torque, whereas the petrol puts out 304 of the metric horsepowers with 422 newton meters of torque. I imagine, to be honest, the American spec 3.5-litre turbo won't be an awful lot more powerful than that 2.5 turbo petrol.
No.
Both versions are all-wheel drive, deliver power through the same 8-speed automatic transmission across both. So yes.
Okay.
Auto only. Which is no bad thing in this class of car. I do think that people who sort of demand a manual in this sort of part of the marketplace are sort of possibly missing the point a little bit.
I think it is generally from people who have got the car for a week and then give it back again.
Yes, there is.
Rather than want to live with it and make life as simple as possible.
I tend to agree with you, yes. Yes. Prices for diesel start at £39,450 for the premium model and rise to £42,820 for the luxury. In between the two of them, the sport nestles neatly at £41,800. I had the sport model on test. I say I had the sport model, but it was also, of course, a press car. And what do press cars mean?
Prizes.
Press cars mean prizes, exactly. So there were a whole bunch of options in there. This one had the innovation package, which, and I'm going to quote from the press pack here, highlighting all new GV70's use of the most advanced technology. This pack adds features such as the Matrix LED headlamps, a head-up display, and the state-of-the-art 3D instrument cluster, plus a whole host of advanced driver safety aids. And it comes in at £4,190. Let's move on. We also had the comfort seat package, further enhancing the luxury and well-being of occupants with the addition of an ergo-motion front seat for the driver, electric lumbar support for the passenger, and seat ventilation for both. £1,470. Second row comfort seat package. This comprises heated front and rear seats, retractable sunshades, and acoustic laminated side glass. That one is a mere £600, which actually feels quite reasonable. We had the electronic limited slip diff, which I troubled not a jot for £450. And we also had the colour, which I shall come to shortly when we start talking about the outside, which was Brunswick Green.
Okay.
Which was dark green, £750. That came in for an actually, I don't feel unreasonable given the kit level, £49,260. Actually not that bad at all.
No, it doesn't sound that bad, actually.
Given what it is, what it looks like, the gear you're getting for that money, I actually think that's pretty darned reasonable.
Yeah, I do. I think that seat package was the same as the one I had in the shooting brake as well, which, if I remember correctly, is the one that gives you a little bit of a hug at certain speeds.
It does. We shall talk about that a little bit later. It does give you a hug and then it just lets go of you. But we'll see. So the outside, I've already kind of given a description that it's a bit like a Stelvio. Mm-hmm. But if you imagine a Stelvio crossed with a Junior Bentley, then you're getting pretty much there aesthetically. And that, by the way, is a compliment. So it is a little bit blingy, but it's not ridiculously blingy. I actually, when I took this up to Perth, I went to visit a couple of friends, and actually, all credit to Mike as I rocked up, and he said, "Well, I knew it wasn't your car because it was just a little bit too showy for you." which, I mean, you were there, you saw it. We met up on my way back south again, and I think that's a pretty fair description. I'm also quite flattered by that. But it is just a little bit showy, but it's not ridiculously showy. It's nice. It's different enough looking that people notice that it's something a bit different, and then they're curious and they ask. And from anyone who asked, that included loads of people I didn't know. It was one of those cars where people question you about it because they're just not sure what it is. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah. I think Genesis have captured the wider imagination, because I got similar with the shooting brake. Yeah. It's only one that looks like that.
Yeah, it's that bit different. It's not slashy and overly gross. It's just quite handsome looking. Yeah. Everyone commented on the Brunswick Green. I really liked it. I like a dark green car. And this was a very nice sort of British racing green style car. Brunswick Green, though, is a satin finish. Now, I'm not so keen on it. I don't really like the satin finish. I would rather it was normal, traditional gloss finish paint. Everybody else liked it. You liked it.
Yes. I like the finish. I lean towards what you're saying, though, and acknowledge it, because I think on that car, a normal finish would have been absolutely spot on, particularly in that colour. Yes. The satin finish, to me, feels more like a car thing than an SUV thing.
It does a bit. It just, yeah.
But we're getting very personal preference, I think, at this point.
We are. It is. But I think it was nice. It was beautifully finished anyway.
Yes.
There are 13 different paint finishes available. They are, you can get them, solid colours, metallic colours, pearlescent colours, and of course, matte finish colours. The configuration is a bit janky. It can't show all of them. So, for example, it couldn't show the Brunswick Green. So there is actually some real research to be done. But the important thing to take away here is that the car is available in actual colours.
Yay!
And the thing is, I've seen a few of them here because obviously they sell more of them in the US because the Hyundai Genesis as a model has been around for a long time. And they all look really good. That was actually one of the things was, of course, I had no idea what it looked like when you see one of these driving along the road because you don't get them round every corner. So it's been quite nice the last little while to actually be able to see them being driven and think they are good-looking cars on the road. They really do sit nicely. I can see why people were quite positive. The sport trim that I had, by the way, brings a three-dimensional mesh design to the grille, a bit like a Bentley. The bright work isn't bright, it's dark chrome. You get slightly different bumpers. 19-inch wheels are standard, and you get large, round, and very visible exhaust pipes at the back, and it looks great. The one down the garage here, by the way, is pearlescent white with dark bright work, if that makes sense. It's very black. It's a little bit more looks a bit more like a Panda. I don't think it's as good looking as the green and the dark chrome of the press car I had.
Okay, so what about the inside then?
There won't be too many surprises, really. The comments from the outside sort of carry on to the inside. It's a nice place to be. But let's start, before I jump too far ahead, let's start in the motoring podcast tradition and start at the back. It has the most self-opening of self-opening boots.
That is wide. I'm looking at the picture, and they can't get much further unless they start going up the side of the car.
Oh, yeah,
it's great.
But it's the thing is that sometimes if you walk past it and pause briefly at the back, it would just automatically open the boot for me.
Ah, okay. So it's sentient.
I can see how that is a useful feature, but it can also be a little bit disconcerting, just depending on how large your driveway is and where you have to walk past to get in and out of the house. So, yes, there's one thing to be aware of that is that it is a sort of self-revealing boot. The boot itself, though, is large. It's flat. There is a decent size of undercroft. There are storage covers to each side. It is well lit. Curry hooks aren't great, but hey, we can live with that occasionally. And it gets bonus points in the rear for being able to take the retractable load cover and being able to store that in the undercroft and just under the back of the boot floor as well. So that if you go somewhere, then you have a storage space for it, a la many Toyotas do that as well.
Yep.
Many other brands do as well. If you choose to purchase the tallest Billy bookcases available in IKEA in the UK, you can fit 2 of those in length from the back of the boot to just to the back of the front passenger seat.
Okay.
Allegedly, I'm told, supposedly, not that I would ever do that, of course. Rear seats split 60-40, give a flat load space front to rear to enable any theoretical Billy bookcases you might be carrying to fit in. That rear seat comfort package, I didn't really test the rear seat that much, other than to fold it and potentially carry Billy bookcases, but it gives you those rear climate controls, heated outer seats, window blinds, acoustic glass, all that kind of fun stuff I've already listed. Legroom is good and the headroom is plentiful. One thing to mention is that you can, if you are in the back seat, you can, there is a control for sliding the front passenger seat forwards.
Oh, right.
Provided nobody's sitting on it. So you can give yourself a little bit more legroom for that full limousine experience if you're seated behind the passenger. There you go. Useful buttons are us. What else? Oh, yes, the floor in the back is pretty flat. There's a small transmission hump, but more of a concern possibly is that the outer seats are quite sculpted. I mean, they're not deep sculpted, but any center passenger does sit on a bit of a hump.
Okay.
USB and 12-volt charging points to the rear as well, as is pretty much standard these days.
Yep.
Let's move to the main part. The front. It is a nice place to be. It's nicely finished. It's nicely designed. It's a little bit garish in places and a little bit contrived. But generally it's a nice place to be. The seats are extremely comfortable. Those Ergomotion front seats give you 18-way adjustment, supposedly. I didn't actually count them myself. Everything from squab length to height of the height of the headrest and all that kind of good stuff. Yeah. You can adjust quite happily and quite comfortably. They do massage as well.
Okay.
They do massage as well, which is good if you're driving, up the M6 late at night and you're sort of making progress. And it is recognized by the German Campaign for Healthier Backs. So there you go.
Crikey.
If you want a healthier back, spend a mere £48,000 on a Genesis.
With the extras fitted.
That's including the extras. I'm being more generous than that. One thing I did notice that whenever you reach some motorway speeds, it does hug you a little bit tighter. And it does sort of give you a little grip, which is quite nice. Just that little snug sort of zzz, as it moves the side bolsters in a little bit. What I didn't like is that whenever you were slowing down, whenever you met traffic on the road and you're slowing down, then just at the point where you really want it to, you're decelerating, you want the seat to hold you a bit tighter, you're sort of already moving out of the seat, then it releases you and it's like being dropped.
I hug you no more.
So just when you wanted that little bit of a sort of, right, we're gonna lock you in and make you nice and cozy here as you slow down towards slow traffic, it just goes rip, just lets you go, and it's like, oh no, I didn't like that bit. I wish it would hold me for a bit. I wish it would hold me tight for a bit longer.
Please hug me for longer. But I think you were in normal mode then, weren't you? You weren't in sport when it was...
I generally wasn't in sport. I was in eco or normal.
Because if you're in sport, I think it continues to hug you because I never got that issue where it let go.
Ah, okay.
So I think that is a setting thing. But yes, I agree with you. If it activates and you are suddenly braking because there's traffic or a corner and stuff, that's not a great time to get distracted by going, what's wrong with the seat?
Yeah, it is. There's a little bit of that, yes. The first few times, it's like, whoa. One last thing, when you're sitting in the driver's seat, sport trim, you get a 3-spoke steering wheel, which is quite a handsome-looking thing. The other specs don't. They get this kind of weird 2-spoke item, which looks a bit too much like a marshmallow. It's just a bit yuck.
Okay.
It's not to my taste. I'm sure it's a perfectly lovely steering wheel, but I just think it looks a bit rubbishy. Yeah, sport trim is the one to have because you get the 3-spoke steering wheel. How's about that? There's consumer advice for you. Instrument binnacle on this car, as I read through the options, this is the upgraded 12.3 inch instead of digital displays, so the standard 8 inch. What the 12.3 inch one does is it uses magic to follow your eye line and to make what are classically styled dials look 3-dimensional. It works really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a while to work out if it was a fully digital setup or if it was digital with some physical components in there as well, because that sometimes you do get dials like that where everything looks blank, but actually stuff like there is a physical needle behind a screen to make it look like a digital display. No, it is all digital, and the perspective changes as you move your head around. Blooming clever. Completely unnecessary, but lovely. Just really nice.
Okay.
As well. So that was kind of cool. Moving sort of down across full width vents, right across the middle, it becomes a sort of accent line in the kind of place where you used to get a little chunk of plastic wood trim or some brushed aluminium or piano black or something. Now, as part of the current trend of having the sort of the air vents run the full width. They do actually do that. And there are ventilation settings which will just give you a diffuse fresh airness through them rather than a jet blast straight at your face, which is good because I much prefer that sort of diffuse run of air. Above all of that and sort of poking out the top of the dashboard's 14.5-inch screen in a sort of very, very panoramic setup. So it is not very tall, but it is very wide.
It's like CinemaScope.
It is, yes. It's like that little bit in the cinema where the curtains open a little bit wider just before the main feature. It has CarPlay, etc., but the standard nav was really good. The only trouble with the standard nav was it did have a bit of a, at every junction it would tell you to stay on the road you were on, which is a bit annoying. I always feel that that's a not very good piece of algorithm translation from left-hand drive to right-hand drive.
Mm.
It was controlled not so much not from a touchscreen, but by a sort of, I'm going to say an iDrive style knob, which was just a big block of plastic crystal. I want to make fun of it. I want to laugh at the garishness, but it was actually worked really well, and it actually looked quite nice too. So I can't. I did actually quite like it. Below the vents, there's climate controls and displays. Whenever I say some bits are a little bit contrived in the cabin, then that's one of the areas. I mean, this is a some hard plastics type moment. I'm so sorry. It's such a mojo thing to moan about. Supposedly it's styled to mimic the shape of an aircraft wing. Yeah, I know. But on the other hand, it's physical buttons and controls for the air conditioning climate control system, which again, as ever, I set at 21.5 on auto, and I never touched the darn thing, no matter how sunny it was, how wet it was, how dark it was, or how light it was. It just worked. Underneath that, shortcut buttons for the infotainment, as is the Hyundai Group Way.
Mm-hmm.
Just did its stuff. There's a very high console between driver and passenger for that sporty feel. There's drive selection knob and I don't just mean me, there's for choosing whether you want Eco Comfort Sport or Sport Plus. I don't think I ever played Sport Plus, as well as Terrain, as well, which again, I didn't play with. It wasn't a vehicle I felt, I didn't really have time, to be honest, to take it anywhere that might have been slightly muddy. Rearwards from that, the crystal controller for the infotainment. There's also a covered G charger. It was wireless CarPlay, by the way, and a pair of perfectly decent cup holders. Yay!
Cool.
I think I bored everyone socks off.
No, that was vital information.
Loads of space for 4. Loads of space for 4.5 people anyway, and plenty of luggage. That's really the takeaway from that.
Okay, then. So you've done the exterior. You've told us about how nice it is to sit inside it. What's it actually like to do things with, then, to drive?
I did about 800 miles in the week and I had it. So I did Scotland and back. Lots of motorways at night, and it just ate that up. Okay. Just didn't really notice it. Fantastic distance car. Really good distance car. It was decent around town too, although, to be honest, you'd ideally want something smaller, something with a bit shorter bonnet, where it's easier to spot the extremities. But, on the motorway, brilliant car. 0 to 62 in 7.9 seconds, 133 miles an hour top speed. Top speeds should be plenty for anyone. 7.9 seconds is nippy enough, It was pretty decent, and it's delivered with a fair old slug of torque as well, and completely seamlessly through the auto transmission. I did test out some of the modes on the twistier stuff. It is a heavy car. It is just over 2 tons.
Okay,
and you did feel that, but otherwise, it was really quite good fun. The all-wheel drive system is very much biased towards the rear. I'm going to sound a little bit tread shuffly here, I'm sorry, towards the rear. So if you sort of tried to nail it mid-corner, then you could feel, obviously it stayed online, but you could feel the rear starting to rotate away rather than it going into understeer straight away. I feel like such a fake by making sentences like that.
I look forward to seeing the video of you doing Smokey, coming around the corner with it all. No, yes, definitely not. No tyres were harmed in the making of this podcast. I don't know how much of that was the ELSD. I haven't driven a GV70 without it. So yeah, but it drives well. You can make pace point to point in this, and you can enjoy making pace point to point as well. Okay, cool.
Obviously, the modes do what you'd expect. Eco turns everything green and dulls the throttle response. Comfort's the default setting. Sport and Sport Plus turn everything red and heavy.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't try the off-road. I didn't try terrain at all. I imagine it does terrainy stuff. Ride comfort was really good. Mine came on the smaller, I'll let you invent the air quotes, which I'm definitely not doing at this end, the smaller 19-inch wheels. It is available with optional 21-inch wheels. I do rather suspect they would be like road rollers. Perfect if you've got some spare tarmac you want to flatten. But to be honest, the 19 inches look good, and certainly the ride comfort was excellent.
The car does not look underwheeled with 19 inches.
No, it is not underwheeled. I think that on 21s, it's going to look like a bit of a donk. This spec of GV70 has road preview. Now, according to all the materials, road preview uses the front camera to read the road ahead and to prime the dampers for what's coming up. I'm not sure how much it contributed to anything, but the body stayed level, controlled. It was smooth on some pretty grim bits of road as well. And I don't just mean the M6. So it did a great job there, and it was just a comfortable, nice place to be. Economy, well, I didn't feel it was that great, and I'm probably got a sort of skewed sense of this stuff. I got 36.5 mpg over the time I had it. I felt that was a bit low, but I'm possibly being unfair.
What was the combined WLTP?
Oh, hang on. I shall tell you in just a moment, because actually I have that. Combined WLTPs between 40.3 and 37.99. So do you know what? I'm really not that far off what they say it's going to be. I was not driving in the way that they do WLTP tests.
No.
But I was making progress for a fair bit of that. So I'm probably being unfair there.
Well, it's also the nature of the vehicle, the size of the engine, and the combination of that. You're not, for us to expect north of 40 a lot is a bit, I think...
Is a bit unfair.
I don't think that's realistic.
No. I've just said
moment.
I was being unfair. I was being unfair. Yes, the engine, by the way, is the one bit that there is nothing wrong with the engine. It's just that in this day and age, it feels a little bit old school. It doesn't feel agricultural. It doesn't feel bad. It just feels a little bit diesel-y, and possibly because it's been 2 years since I had a diesel press car. I mean, the last diesel press car I had was the Alfa Stelvio. I worked this one out. It's just that I'm out of practice of driving diesels. I'm just not used to it. But it just, the engine, because I could sort of occasionally sort of feel and sense the engine, it just felt a little bit out of place. Again, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I found it a little bit odd and unusual.
Okay. I interrupt you before you could tell about the CO2s.
Yes, CO2s, depending on where you look for the figures, it's either 175 to 186 or 185 to 195 grams per kilometre of CO2. That's not awesome. Now, the one thing that is left to say, really, is that since I had this, Genesis have released an electric, they say an electrified version, but it is an electric version of this as well. So if you really want the opposite of the diesel experience, then you can actually, and you're going to be using it, I don't know, I guess mostly for down use, but with occasional longer outings, then that has been released. So you may well be interested in that instead. One of the nice things about the electric one, to be honest, is that it looks just like the internal combustion engine ones. And it's definitely a way around those CO2 emissions. So if you are interested in this, but think, I wish it was a bit more future-proof, then that may well be your way to get into that.
Okay. Technology then. So what's crammed into this vehicle? I presume there is quite a bit.
Most stuff, to be honest. I mean, lots of the usual stuff, all the sort of usual driver assistance. So it had smart cruise control, rear blind spot collision avoidance, lane keeping assist system, forward collision avoidance systems for both junction and cars, bikes, pedestrians, intelligent speed limit, manual speed limit, lane following assist, and highway driving assist.
So, just quickly, and this ties back to the last one, do you think that helped with the whole, you made progress and felt quite relaxed while you were doing so some of the more major roads?
I'm a big fan of smart cruise control.
Mm-hmm. Was it one of these new, quite seamless systems that felt quite natural rather than the older, more old school, the sort of Gen 1 versions of them that were a bit off and on?
Very much so, yes. The sort of, oh my goodness, we're about to crash into the car in front. Oh no, it's just stopped me. And I've just, headbutted the steering wheel. No, none of that. It was a really nice smart cruise control. It worked very smoothly, just as you'd expect. It felt like a human. It wasn't scary at all.
Good.
AEB, the emergency braking, didn't actually activate that at all.
Good.
Lane keeping assist was competent. You didn't pinball from side to side within the lane. It was quite good at just keeping you centered in the lane.
Mm-hmm.
And again, doing miles late into the evening, that kind of stuff just reduces fatigue a bit.
Yeah.
Just really helpful.
Yeah, good systems do make the journeys less stressful, and that's a good thing.
They do. Absolutely do. Other thing that it had was the Highway Driving Assist 2, which is geofenced to, or seems to be geofenced to motorways. The idea is that with merely the indicator stalk, the car will do lane changes and stuff for you. In those 800 miles, I think I managed to make it work twice. Almost every other time it decided that some parameter wasn't met, and so it refused to do it. Now, thinking back on that, it's possible that were I not making the progress I was making, perhaps it would have been happier.
Okay.
The trouble was that because I haven't worked out what the parameter was that was wrong, I did keep trying it. And the trouble was I got to the stage where I was expecting it to not work. And then it would go, no, you're holding the steering wheel. I'm not doing it. You're holding the steering wheel. And it was like, balls. It would have done it then. But when it did it, it was actually quite good. It was a little slow in changing lane, but it wasn't bad at all. It was quite comfortable. It's one of those things I would like to try more, to just find out if it's a me issue or a car issue.
All right.
I'm not sure which it is. Last notable piece of tech it had those LED matrix headlamps.
Okay.
And this took me a little while to realize, but they're the ones which sense the vehicle's coming towards you and will blank out the vehicle coming towards you and will keep moving as it goes along. So crossing the A66 in the dark, so those of you who know Scotch Corner to Penrith, which is it's not a road troubled by street lamps, put it that way. More snow markers than there are street lamps. And but when I discovered that I didn't have to keep dipping my headlamps as I was at the start, because what the car would do was it would track the trucks and the cars coming the other way, and it would blank out that bit. And even if there was a car in front of me, it would leave them slightly in the dark and have my headlamps basically shining past the dark thing.
Oh, right. Okay.
By going round the side of it, by blanking it. And it was a bit mesmerizing at first. And it's like, whoa, look, it's blanking out. That's so cool. Whoops, I should really be watching the road.
That's beautifully illuminated for me.
Yes, exactly. It's doing a great job. Fantastically bright lights, but really good. And nobody sort of flashed to say, what are you doing? Type of thing, and coming the other way, or even if they were in front of me. They worked really well. Big convert to those. I've always liked steering headlamps, but these worked really nicely.
Oh, nice.
Just a cool thing. Yeah.
Excellent.
Oops, because I'm easily amused. Yes, I think that's everything. I think I've raced through most of that.
Summary then, please. Verdict.
Remember how much I liked that green Alfa Stelvio diesel that I had, that we took to Anglesey and stuff.
Yeah. This
falls into the same category as that. Yes. It's great because it's not German brand.
Yeah.
And if you want something a bit different, if you've kind of had enough of your Mercedes, your BMW, your Audis, you want something which is a bit different looking, but the same kind of quality levels, inside, in fact, possibly higher quality levels in some cases, then this is worth a look. I say CO2 and fuel consumption, if those are things which are high on your radar, maybe not the choice for you. But yes, it's kind of cool. The other caveat I would say is, as a former Infiniti owner, do have a little bit of a look into the overall cost of ownership. I'm sure that Genesis will be doing certain things if you're going on a PCP, which would be normal for this kind of vehicle, to be honest, at this stage in its life. Then do check what the guaranteed future values are, that kind of thing. Just make sure you're not stung by cost of ownership. Make sure you're not going to get stung by servicing costs as well, which may be well above what you would expect. As I say, I'm merely speaking about my experience with Infiniti ownership and just putting those caveats in place. I have a funny feeling that actually when you buy this car, you get the first 3 or 4 years worth of servicing included. So it's probably not going to be an issue. I think Genesis learned quite a lot from the Infiniti experience, to be honest.
Yeah, they've got a whole system where sort of a concierge system where they come and take your car away to service it and stuff like that. So they're getting around. It appears they've ticked the box on the, well, where do I take it?
Yes, well, that's it. And that was one of the Infiniti issues, was that, how far do I have to go to find a garage? Because my local Nissan dealer's not going to touch it, and they didn't. But they're notably awkward in catering. But the $60,000 question is, if it came down to the choice, would I choose this or the Stelvio? And the thing is, I'd actually rather have the Stelvio, but I'd rather have the ownership experience of the Genesis. So very tough one. I just don't know. But what I do know is that I did really like the GV70.
I got that impression. Certainly when we met up and you were talking about it, it was very positive in what you were saying. I think it looks good. It sounds like it's great if you are looking to sort of if you want to sort of high up GT. It sounds like that's what it's perfect for.
Lots of people do. Yeah, so I really hope
it's great for that sort of thing.
I mean, I see them here. They look good on the road. They're a nice size, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, lots to be said for it.
Okay, cool.
Anyhow, if you want to know more, then don't forget, between now and next time, you can give us any feedback, share your thoughts to the show at Motoring Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, on Facebook, and on the contact page of motoringpodcast.com, the hub of all our activities. Please don't forget to leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or however your podcast app lets you do such a thing. In the meantime, Andrew, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is via Twitter. If you search for Crack Windscreens, you'll find me there. And Alan, if people feel somehow that you have maybe missed a certain bit off on your review of the Genesis GV70, what's the best way for them to ask you personally?
They can personally ask me via Twitter, where I'm at AJP Bradley. That's Bradley. We will be back before very long, but until then, I've been Alan Bradley.
I've been Andrew Clues.
And safe motoring.